This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien kicks off today's show, explaining what we are seeing in the grain market and contributing international factors. Continuing the show is Rodrigo Onofre, K-State row crop plant pathology specialist, with information on the conformation of tar spot in Kansas for 2024. We are also joined by Ron Wilson with a Kansas profile on sunflower summer. Chip Redmond, K-State meteorologist, ends the show today with a weather update. He says when Kansans can expect the weather to warm up. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Friday show with a grain market update. And as always, we're joined by K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
Dan, seeing some positive stuff in the grain market, and as we talk about it, starting off with what futures are looking like.
Yesterday's market, that would be Thursday, June the 6th. Thank you. I get my date right. Saw markets move to the high side after several days of moving lower. We saw July corn close at $4.52, up 12 cents. That shows how the trend that it had down before Thursday. Dees corn, again, now we're looking at new crop prospects. Dees corn, the harvest contract, 469.5, up 10.5. As I see for soybeans, July lead contract 12, up 22 and 3/4 cents. A new crop November, 1167, up 16.5. Even wheat was up some, but the main movers were again corn and soybeans. For wheat, July with harvest coming 678, up about 1 3/4 cents. And we'd had a run up in the wheat contract in particular due to concerns about weather in the Black Sea region. You got dry to some freezes affecting Russian crops, again, dryness now in the Ukraine. Other parts of Europe also not doing the best, is my understanding from what I read reports. So all of that had come into play, and I don't know that we're done yet. I just still remember historically when we had major volatility coming in on those crops late and getting off towards July and August, and seeing major rallies because of crop failures in those areas. So we've kind of taken the measure of it so far in the market, and the real key will be, I guess, what they pull out of the field and how proactive they are on actually moving grain to ports, moving it by rail out of that region, and continuing to see the situation, to support the type of situation we've seen where the wheat markets are just so. We talked about before we came on air how the wheat market right now has underlying questions, underlying issues of vulnerability is probably a polite way to say it, that if they can't come to fruition and result in lower production, could lead to stronger prices down the road. And that's the most professional way to say it, but not there yet. If you'd like, Shelby, I can go talk about the cash markets to undergird that if you want.
Go for it.
So let's look at that. Then, so you see a fair amount of variability around the state for corn prices. Again, as remains the case, you have Garden City cash prices 45 cents over yesterday's close. 497 is the top cash price. The new crop bid there, 485, 15 under. And I would say for cash prices, you see the next strongest places in parts of the state where we have decent, have the best basis levels. You have 10 over in Hutchinson, Topeka 6 over, 5 over in Colby, 7 under in Salina, Columbus, even money. So again, that the demand center in southwest Kansas still stands out. That's where the feedlots are and some ethanol plants. I would say that sorghum prices that had been so exceedingly strong earlier on, they still have are very comparable in terms of their upfront bids to corn. But when you look at the pace of actual grain sorghum exports, at least at the moment, this last week that we'd seen, we had exports of about 2.75 million bushels. When we get the real sharp export numbers, sharply higher of 4 and 5 and 10 million bushels a week, that's when local bids, especially in central part of Kansas, come in and really reflect that, but not necessarily yet. Soybean bids, variability around the state. And again, whereas feed grains seem to be strongest in Southwest, the cash markets for soybeans have been strongest in South Central around the Hutchinson area. See a bid of $12, even money with the futures for the spot cash price. Next highest bids, and that'd be, again, $12. Then 11.75, 25 under in Topeka, and things moving lower from there around the state. And I would say also with after what I'd said about the wheat market, and you wonder, well, where a cash price is going? Well, they're apparently anticipating harvest. You've got the strongest bids around the state. Hutchinson 673, 5 under, and Salina, Topeka, both at 663, 15 under, and then other parts of the state weaker than that. So it's sort of is as it is in terms of the wheat situation. So here we have kind of coming back and talking about wheat, the issues happening overseas that certainly raise concerns of world numbers, very, very tight and declining, yet the hard red harvest is coming on. And so we'll be balancing that. And it would take, I guess, strong export movement on our shores, not just around the world, on our shores probably to overcome what right now looks like a real lack of enthusiasm during the harvest time. But when you really get short, then you have these inverted markets. You'd see things really shoot higher. Right now in the wheat market, that'd be a surprise. But when it's happened in the past, it was a surprise as well. So I think we'll just keep watching for it.
As we're thinking about these prices and specifically looking at those feed grains right now, taking into account that these numbers don't include private deals that could be taking place?
Yes. Here in Western Kansas, my office is out in Colby area. I hear discussion of some pretty strong bids, and they're isolated. They're mainly with feedlots. Anybody watching grain markets understands that situation to where a feeder had supply coverage until this time. And they're trying to bridge the gap between now and the next crop, and so they offer really strong basis bids. So we don't see that necessarily as much at the elevators. That Southwest bid is good. But then if you come to an elevator, say you're going to buy grain to fill one of those bids, well, you've got an in and out fee, 20, 30 cents, something like that. So by the time you look at, say, $4.97 as a high bid in Garden City, if there's a feeder that's caught short, add 30 cents to it, well, it's $5.20, $5.30, something like that. And I guess those type of opportunities are there. And really for someone that has grain in an on-farm situation and the ability to truck grain or to hire it done, that's something to keep your eyes out for.
And Dan, wanting to talk a little bit more on kind of the international market of factors that are taking place in Brazil.
One of the issues yesterday that came in on the market was that the government of Brazil had proposed a change in the tax code, and was responded to quite negatively. And that's a very polite word to describe how they responded to that. And the people are no doubt in these situations, they're struggling to actually deduce what goes on. But the initial impulse was that, gosh, if this came into being, it could inhibit Brazilian exports. Or from what I read it, well, the Brazilian government's looking to generate revenue. Well, what's one of the strongest export products coming out of Brazil? Agricultural products, food products. So I think this remains to be seen where it would go. We had seen these type of market distortions before coming out of Argentina, and now to see it coming out of Brazil would be quite the situation. And you've got these ongoing things. Brazil is such a big area. Again, they have floods in Rio Grande do Sul to the south. They've had dry conditions in their second corn crop, the Safrinha corn crop, in the central and north parts of as I understand it. So, come back to that initial initial idea that we'd had, there are issues undergirding these markets that are out there, and any one of them that bring vulnerability to this current idea that gosh, we'll have plenty of grain, don't worry about it, the market's over responding, just wait until we actually see it. Well, there are things that are developing, and here we sit early June, and we've got a long ways to go before we can just christen large crops, no problems, as we get into latter August, heading off into September.
As we look forward and for the grain market, June 28th playing potentially a really important role.
Very important in that the USDA will come out with its acreage report. And they had a prospective plantings report at the end of March, representing March 1 conditions. They'll have an acreage report end of June, representing about right now. And there's this issue of delayed plantings that are happening in parts of the U.S. Corn Belt. And about the last 5, 7, 8, 9% of corn is slow to be put in because of basically excessively wet conditions. Yet when you look at the USDA NASS crop condition reports, looks great. You see the planting progress, percent corn emerge, where we're at on soybeans, no problem. Everything's looking great. But yet you read a lot of discussion in the market about how, that last 5+% could be pretty problematic. So I guess we'll see. And it's late enough as they consider replanting some of those areas that they're getting into their crop insurance windows where the coverage will start to decline, or they'll really have to ratchet it down and get shorter season corn varieties to plant. And that's in those areas that you're losing yield potential. So you got this thing going on. It's an undercurrent in the market. By and large, the market, from what I can tell in terms of price action, pretty much ignored it. Hey, rain makes grain. What are these people complaining about? Well, that's out there. And it adds one more issue to the market basket of things of questions that still have to be resolved that could impact the supply-demand balances in the market and affect prices.
Dan, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give us our grain market update.
Thank you very much, Shelby. I appreciate it.
That was K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show by talking about tar spot with K-State row crop plant pathology specialist Rodrigo Onofre. Rodrigo, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me here today.
Rodrigo, before we hop into why this is currently a concern, what is tar spot?
Yeah, tar spot, it's a major corn disease that has been affecting our yields, not just here in Kansas, but across all the corn-producing region.
Why is this something that we're talking about a little earlier than we usually do?
Yeah, that's the biggest concern. We just reported here in Kansas in 2 counties, right, in Donovan and Atchison. This is a month earlier than what we found last year. And it was also the first report across all the corn region in U.S.
Why is that maybe a concern that it's a month earlier than it has been?
The biggest concern is that this disease can have more than one cycle, even within one season. So this disease can have multiple cycles until the end of the corn season, right? So since we're picking up so early, my concern right now is how bad it will be as we go into 2024 season, right?
Any guesses as to why it's this early?
So I think there's 2 combinations here, right? One, Donovan and Atchison were severely affected by tar spot last year. So tar spot is a disease that survives in corn residue. So the inoculum was there, right? So we had that pressure last year. So the inoculum is there, and it's a combination now of the disease triangle, right? We have the inoculum, we have the host, and the weather. A lot of folks are planting earlier, the mild temperature, all these rains that we're catching, followed by those drought spots 1 or 2, 3 days. I think it's just been the perfect storm for disease development so far.
For those producers that did have tar spot last year, should they be a little bit more watchful for it this year?
Absolutely. Those yields are certainly at higher risk for disease spread and development. And just keep in mind that the lesion that we see today, actually infection happens 2-3 weeks ago, right? So we're kind of like always playing catching up with tar spot. So that's why it's so important, and it spreads so quick, right?
What about for those cases where one field might have it, but the neighboring field doesn't. Is that a time when those neighbors should maybe communicate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's keeping a track of the disease. There's a website called Corn IPM Pipe. You can look for a tar spot and can monitor that as well. As we get into the season now that we know it's here and it's showing up, it's crucial to start scouting early. The earlier that you find, better chance to manage and to plan your fungicide applications as we go into the season, right? And keep in mind that our fungicide applications, we should hold our temptations about spraying early until, say, V10, between that V10 and VT, because our fungicides, they're going to last about 14 to 21 days. So the biggest question is, if you go early, is like how many times are you going to be spraying to the end of the season, right? To that R5 at least. So I'd say if you could wait until that V3 and perhaps follow by a second application around R3, that would be definitely a good approach.
What impacts do you see tar spot having on the corn crop?
So some of the fields last year got severe impact, especially on that Donovan and Atchison. We saw yield impact of approximately 70 bushels per acre less than the usual because of the high pressure of this disease. And when you're thinking about a fungicide, just keep in mind that 2 and 3 mode of actions are definitely better than 1 mode of action for disease control, as well as for yield benefit from those applications.
Do producers, before applying something to their field, need to not only look at the growth stage, but maybe the severity of the tar spot?
Absolutely. I think the first step is scouting your fields. Do I have it or not? If you don't, hold on a little bit more further into the season, right? And as you start picking disease, hopefully between that V10, VT, I'll starting to think about a fungicide being placed at that point. And then monitoring, right? The fungicide, as I mentioned, will last for about 14 to 21 days if you will need a second application or not.
What exactly does tar spot look like, and where on the plant is it most likely to be found?
So tar spot, by its name, is that tar lesion. It's black rays, and it goes across the leaf, right? I kind of joke that I never found so much bug poop as scouting for tar spot because it looks just like a bug poop, right? The main difference is bug poop will rub off and tar spot will not. And keep in mind that last year we found tar spot from Donovan, right on that corner in the northeast, to Washington County. So it's slowly spreading towards the west and south of the state as well.
Rodrigo, what other disease concerns are there besides tar spot?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think tar spot is new and we're still learning about it. But keep in mind that we also have our typical, I would say, risk for gray leaf spot as we get into the season, and as well southern rust, right? Southern rust comes in every year from the south and arrive here in Kansas. We have seen, I'd say, early July is when we start picking up southern rust, and which could be a problem as well. The positive side is that when you put a fungicide for tar spot, you're also managing those diseases.
If people are wanting to find out more information about tar spot or other potential diseases they could be dealing with, what's your recommendation for them?
Crop Protection Network has really good materials, not just on tar spot itself, but we also have our fungicide efficacy tables with a lot of the products where growers can check which one works best or not.
Rodrigo, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give us an update on tar spot.
Thank you.
That was K-State row crop plant pathology specialist Rodrigo Onofre. I will link resources in today's show notes on agtoday.net, where you can learn more about tar spot. Before we cut to a break, we're now going to be joined by Ron Wilson, who is the director of the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development at K-State, as he talks about a new program, Sunflower Summer.
This is Kansas Profile. I'm Ron Wilson, director of the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development at Kansas State University. School's out. Soon that joyous cry will be shared and heard by kids across the nation as the school year comes to an end. Mom and Dad might not be so excited. But what is next? Today we'll learn about a Kansas initiative which is aimed at getting families out to enjoy summertime attractions in the Sunflower State. It's today's Kansas Profile. Jordan Romerman is marketing manager for Kansas Tourism, a division of the Kansas Department of Commerce. A native of Stafford, she went to K-State and worked in communications for Kansas Wheat before joining Kansas Tourism in 2019. She has taken the lead on this new project called Sunflower Summer. It actually began in the Kansas Department of Education in 2021, Romerman said. COVID relief dollars were used to encourage educational summer activities. When that program was set to end, The results were so positive that the program was chosen to continue under the auspices of Kansas tourism beginning in summer 2024. Sunflower Summer is a way to help Kansas families explore the state of Kansas for free, Romerman said. Through a website, Kansas families can access a mobile app which provides free access to more than 220 attractions across the state. There is a downloadable app for both Apple and Android, Romerman said. A Kansas-based developer designed this program specifically for Sunflower Summer, she said. The website is www.sunflowersummer.org. From that website, a family can download the mobile app onto their smartphone, set up an account, and access tickets to participating Kansas attractions absolutely free. The program is for Kansans only and is targeted to families with children. The free tickets are for use by children ages pre-K to grade 12, plus up to 2 adult guardians. Guardian tickets can also be transferred to family members and other trusted adults. Public, private, and homeschooled children are eligible. The program is available from May 25 to August 11, 2024. Free tickets are for each family's one-time use at each venue. When the Kansas tourism staff learned that they would be managing the program, they set out to expand its offerings. We pounded the pavement, Romerman said. The staff reached out to more attractions in various regions of the state so as to encourage participation. We've diversified the types of attractions as well as locations across the state, she said. The number of participating attractions is up 120%. As displayed on the website map, these participating attractions are located literally from border to border and corner to corner of Kansas. They range from the Amelia Earhart Hangar Museum in Atchison in the northeast to the Morton County Historical Museum at Elkhart in the southwest corner, with more than 200 ticketed and free community attractions in between. These include attractions in both urban and rural settings, ranging from Exploration Place in Wichita to the Geneseo City Museum in the rural community of Geneseo, population 236 people. Now that's rural. Attractions are grouped into 4 categories: nature and animals, arts and sports, amusement and water parks, and museums and history. Each grouping sounds like a lot of fun. All this should combat unfair negative perceptions of Kansas. One of my coworkers says, "People from outside told us there was nothing to do in Kansas, and Kansans believed them," Romerman said. "We want to develop Kansas pride at an early age and have kids be excited about our state," she said. "There are communities using this to attract businesses, and in the long run it could be a resident retainment tool," Romerman said. "We want Kansas kids to get out, explore Kansas, have fun, and eventually know there is a place for them here," Romerman said. To access free tickets, go to www.sunflowersummer.org. School's out. The cries of excited children will soon be echoing through the rapidly emptying hallways of our local schools. Now these children and their families will have the opportunity to enjoy more than 200 attractions for free all across the state. We commend Jordan Romerman and Kansas Tourism for making a difference with creative tourism promotion. This summer, school is out and Kansas is in. For the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development, this is Ron Wilson with Kansas Profile.
Once again, that was K-State's Ron Wilson. I will put another link in today's show notes on agtoday.net, where you can learn more about Sunflower Summer. We're cutting to a short break now, but stick around because we have more for you ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Friday show with a weather update with K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. Chip, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, howdy. Thanks for having me.
Chip, what weather have we been seeing this past week?
A little bit of everything. As usual, we say it every week in Kansas fashion. We've had nice weather. We had hot, muggy weather. We had areas that were growing on 10, 15 days without rainfall, and other areas that keep seeing rainfall. So it's been another dynamic week. Definitely seeing temperatures kind of gradually trend upward, but we still had storm activity, mostly in western Kansas for the weekend, and then that translated eastward as we got further into the week, especially Tuesday, where we saw more stout, severe weather than what we had seen over the last few days, with some hail and high winds, especially in portions of southwest Kansas, Monday night into Tuesday, and then Tuesday more in central Kansas. We had wind gusts up to 70, 75, near 80 miles an hour, damage down in Garden City, down to Medicine Lodge. And so we're in that convective season. And so we have these isolated areas of heavy, intense rains that tend to be very localized. And so some folks have gotten 4 inches of rain this week, and other folks not far away have barely gotten anything. And that's kind of how we roll this time of year. We have to average all that out when we look at the year-end precipitation and average and climatology of precipitation. But folks that got precipitation need to enjoy it because their neighbors might not have.
And does that mean that the drought monitor is looking a little bit better?
Yeah, with just precipitation across state, we do average a lot of rainfall, around 1.5 inches in the east to as much as 3/4 of an inch in the west. And so we need that on a weekly basis to keep up with it. Some folks got a lot more. A lot of folks haven't quite gotten to that average precipitation, though. Just with these localized events, they're just not spread out in enough spatial area to cover those averages. So overall, though, those heavy rains did benefit the folks that were in drought, most notably in southwest Kansas, where we had extreme drought that was added. But took about 10% of the state out of the severe drought this week. So we had some improvements, most notably in the west, where they needed that rainfall.
And you said we've had some warmer temperatures, and is that something we're going to continue to see?
Yeah, we have seen some warmer temperatures, and that combined with the recent precipitations led to sticky air. It's pretty humid, and we've seen some cattle stress as a result, too. We got close to 100 degrees this week. I expect, we're going to have storms again as we look at Friday night into Saturday night. We're going to have several episodes of storms associated with a cold front. That cold front is going to push south. We'll bring cooler weather for Sunday into early next week. Very refreshing, dry air, and temperatures as much as 5 to 8 degrees below normal, or even 10 degrees below normal. We'll take that. That's pleasant air for this time of year in Kansas. And then it looks like we start to see a transition. There's a lot of heat to our west, and that ridge of high pressure is going to start shifting further east as we move into the middle of next week. We'll see how far east it can get, and if we get any more episodes of storms on the fringe. But it does look like temperatures start to drastically warm. And just looking at some models out the rest of the month, it looks like warm is going to be pretty routine for us, and things are definitely going to start drying out as you get into the middle and late part of June.
And as we're thinking about animal comfort and our own comfort, is there a tool on the MESNet that people could check out?
Yeah, it's a great time to check out our 7-day animal comfort forecast. You can get that at mesonet.ksu.edu. That's mesonet.ksu.edu. And go up to the menu, hit those 3 bars in the top left, go to agriculture and animal comfort. You can look at the current conditions, or you can look at the 7-day forecast that's provided through the National Weather Service. We just integrate it into our webpage. And just this week, we had some cattle indices hit that severe or extreme limit of the cattle comfort. That's anything over 105. The good news is we're still cooling off enough at night, despite the higher humidity, that we're only seeing heat stress for short periods right now in the afternoon.
Chip, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give us our weather update.
Yep, thanks for having me.
That was K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. I will link that animal comfort tool in today's show notes on agtoday.net. That's all we have for you this week on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you on Monday.